Britain has a new prime minister, and he's at least, as many people see him, a guy in the form of Donald Trump, hair and all, right? So who is Boris Johnson, and what's he going to do about Brexit? Joining us now is none other than George Galloway. He's a former MP. He's also, at least as I see him, a true truth teller. We over here in America, when we hear the negative side of Boris Johnson, the words we associate with that negative description are all shtick, clown, and opportunist. Is that fair or unfair, those descriptions?
Well, he's all of those things, but he's more than that. He's fiendishly clever. You get what you pay for at the very best private school in the world, Eton, which he attended, and which has produced precisely half of all British prime ministers in history from one school. And, of course, on to Oxford University. He's very clever. He can speak Latin in a way that President Trump sometimes struggles with English. It's something, it's a throwback to an earlier era to have such a toff, as we call them. He's really a blue blood from the traditional English upper class. At least that's how he's fashioned himself, and his parents fashioned themselves. So he's a bit more than that, but he is all of those things. He's also quite brave in the way that the officers who led the charge of the Light Brigade into the guns at the Battle of Balaclava in the Crimean War were, i.e. sometimes utterly recklessly brave.
There's an expression that says, be careful what you wish for. Mr. Johnson now is responsible for doing what some people consider almost impossible. Can he pull it off, or will it be his undoing?
I think he can pull it off. I myself was one of the leaders of the Brexit campaign, so therefore I hope that he does pull it off. But again, to be a bit Clinton-esque about it, it depends what you mean pull it off. He, on the 31st of October, must leave the European Union, or humiliatingly ask for yet another extension. I believe he will get an extra period of time, but they won't call it an extension. They'll call it the beginning of the negotiations for the final stage, for future phases, future relationship, and all that. Equally, the backstop, which is the Irish problem. Britain's had an Irish problem for 800 years, or rather Ireland's had a British problem for 800 years, will be elided similarly by calling it something else. It will no longer be called the backstop. This is where the Eton and Oxford education comes in. Maybe even drop a bit of Latin into the final formula. So I think Brexit is now unstoppable, Rick, and that's because Boris Johnson really believes in it, but also because Nigel Farage's Brexit party is breathing down the Conservatives' neck, and any sign of faltering on Brexit will see the decimation of the Conservative Party.
Interestingly enough, this all coincides with a new leader for the EU. Her name is Ursula von der Leyen. So is this a new beginning for all of Europe, with Boris Johnson in the UK and Ms. von der Leyen at the EU in the helm?
Well, she narrowly scraped into that position by one vote, and that's not much of a majority. There was a big division between France and Germany over her. So I'm not sure they have a new beginning. From where I sit, the European Union is a fading, failing collection of European states whose economies are languishing, many of them in recession, stricken by multiple crises, immigration crises, refugee crises, and so on. And the crisis over national sovereignty, that lies at the heart of the EU's problems. Do we want an undemocratic, I would say anti-democratic, supranational collection of states making decisions that no one can influence, and its leaders elected by no one, removable by no one? Think of your NAFTA, Rick, and think of that across 27 countries. That's what we've got in the EU now. So Britain's well out of it. We're slipping out of the stagnant ports of the European continent and preparing to sail off around the world. I just hope we don't get snarled up in the Persian Gulf first.
Important words. George Galloway, as usual, great guest. Thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure always, Rick.
So you haven't heard that we're the ones covering the stories that you won't see covered anywhere else? In Venezuela, Kazakhstan. Let's go to Hong Kong. And the media reaction to that has been crickets. How about the way we cover those stories? What the hell does that mean? Wally, Wally, Wally. That's the key word in this case, uprising. Keep, can you believe that? Watching. This is the right thing for members of the media to do, to actually pick sides. Look, if you like what you see, subscribe.